Mm.
Okay, everyone, welcome to another ARCS chat. My name is Robin Bauer-Kilgo. I am the Association Manager for ARCS. Just a couple of quick, hold on one second. Just a couple of quick technical notes. There is a little bit of a delay as we port things out onto the actual YouTube format. So just know about that. If we're talking, we will get to your question if it's posted up in the chat. I will also be keeping an eye on the chat the entire time. So if you have any technical questions or you just have any questions at all, please feel free to throw them in the chat and we'll keep track of them. One other thing is if you want to participate in the chat, please log into your Gmail and YouTube account and you will be able to actually log in and talk along with us. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and hand the mic over to one of the other co-hosts, Amanda Robinson.
Thanks, Robin. So today's topic has been aptly titled the Post-COVID Courier. This year has been a whirlwind of sharp changes and a drastic reimagining of how we as collections specialists care for our traveling collections. Many of us likely are faced with the challenge of figuring out new standards that work within our own institutions, and surely we're not alone in those endeavors. There has been much talk these past few months of virtual couriers and bookend couriers, and as we begin to reopen and plan for our new future, a few of us have already experienced some of these new technologies that we might have already been considering pre-COVID. But how realistic in the long term is the long-term adaptation of these new approaches? Is this a just for now solution, or might there be some substantiality to these new practices? And what is the potential for us to come together as a collective voice with solutions that both meet our expectations as professionals and likewise propel us forward toward a new future? So joining us today to talk about this very fun and exciting topic is Errin Copple of LACMA, Marie Knidler of the Louvre Abu Dhabi and Agence France Museums, Stefanii Atkins of the Museum of Modern Art, and Sara Buehler of the Brandywine River Museum of Art. Thank you all to our panelists for joining us today. Now, before we dive in, I want to quickly acknowledge Sara and the Courier Training Subtask Force, which is part of the Global Connections Task Force of ARCS. They champion this topic through to ARCS Chat, and the group is responsible for pulling together much of the content of today's talk. And another special thanks goes out to Caitlin Corrigan of the Met, who helped bring together our wonderful panel today. So without further ado, let's get into the topic. One of the first questions I wanted to throw out to our panel today is how are some of the ways your institutions have adapted to the challenge of not sending couriers during this pandemic? And I think I'd like to start with Marie because she's kind of in a unique situation working with the Louvre Abu Dhabi.
Thank you, Amanda. Hello, everyone. Yes, I feel like I should give a bit of a precision because I'm not working technically for the Louvre Abu Dhabi. I'm working for Agence France Museums, and we are acting as a producer. We are producing a Louvre Abu Dhabi temporary exhibition. It has been set up in the intergovernmental agreement passed between the French Republic government and the Arab Emirates governments. So I am not talking on behalf of Louvre Abu Dhabi tonight because it is not my institution, but I will be speaking about the way we have worked for the installation of one temporary exhibition, which was co-produced by us, AFM, and the Musée de Cluny, which is the Middle Age Museum, National French Middle Age Museum. So it is quite different. Normally, when we are installing temporary exhibition, we are sending an average of 40, 50 people, not only the Courier, but as well external conservator to perform with us and with the Courier the condition reports. We are sending us, the IFM registrar team and the project manager team and the exhibition officer and the scenographer team, and as well a French mounting team and arts handlers team. So there are as well some prerequisite to send people from abroad to work in the Louvre Abu Dhabi premises, which is firstly the obtention of a permit to work in the Louvre Abu Dhabi, which depends on the emission of mission visa given by the custom authority in Abu Dhabi. So during the pandemic, it has affected our organization because firstly of the closure of the borders, the suspension of the emission of those mission visas. So no one could obtain the permit to work because there was no mission visa. And there was as well a mandatory 14 days quarantine if you get to enter the country, which was very complicated at the time. So normally we should have sent 29 people for this exhibition, the installation. And it became no people that we sent from abroad, no courier, no conservator, no art handler from France. And we decided with a process that I should discuss with you all later to a complete and full and entire delegation to the Louvre Abu Dhabi team on site, which is in our case exceptional because we are used to a certain level of autonomy when it comes to temporary exhibition, not the entire collection, not at all, but for temporary exhibition, we IFM have autonomy and we do the job on site, obviously with the total approval and help of the Louvre Abu Dhabi team. But this time it was a complete team composed by a registrar, the preventive conservation unit head of the Louvre Abu Dhabi, one curator, 3 assistant curators, and 6 local Hasenkamp Middle East art handlers. There was as well our IFM Chief Operating Officer, which is based in Abu Dhabi. So that was a precious help. And an assistant working for IFM who coordinated with me the Visio side. So the Louvre Abu Dhabi made all the work on site with the preparatory documentation that we gave us, which was composed by a detailed planning, extremely detailed planning, daily, an illustrated operational phasing to identify very clearly which artwork, which showcase to do when, as well the planning of the Visio, which we could discuss later, but which was very consequent, and 147 daily artworks files with all the documentation for every artwork that was exhibited in the exhibition and that were going to be deinstalled. So we made a huge remote preparation that we gave them, and we made meeting and we exchanges a lot, but in the end, they were doing the job every day. And that was completely new and unique in our organization.
That's fascinating. And a follow-up question I was going to ask was, of the changes that you had to adapt to, do you see any of them as being something that might be permanent? But that seems like it would be a huge adjustment.
Yes, it is definitely a huge adjustment. And like I said, I cannot speak on behalf of the Louvre Abu Dhabi, but I can give you my opinion about that. And I think we should, that's my opinion and my exhibition service opinion, that we should favor case by case management on that question, because what we have succeed here to do with the Louvre Abu Dhabi team on a deinstallation, we cannot take it for granted. For example, installing for a complete exhibition from scratch, it is not the same level of commitment, of professionalism that is required, and the same competence. And I think as well, there is a different stake for French institutions and museums that are quite attached, as you may know, because it is like a cliche, but we are indeed attached to the traditional ways of doing things, and accompanying artworks is one of them. So I think within this framework, very specific of this partnership between the Louvre Abu Dhabi and the French Museum institution, it is quite essential that we listen to the need of both parties and the way of doing things of both parties before considering any of these changes as permanent or viable for the future. But again, this is the IFM and my opinion.
No, but you bring up a very good point, because you talked a little bit about how like this was different because it was the deinstallation process. And I'm curious to know if anyone else on the panel has had an experience or is planning for an experience where they're looking to do an installation somewhere, but in some way, shape, or form, not sending the same crew or any type of crew in that regard to help.
I'll talk. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming, by the way. So we have done similar to Marie. We've had a couple of exhibitions that have been out in the world that we've had to bring back without anyone able to travel for them. We had one that was out in Shanghai, China, and another one that was in Dhahran, Saudi Arabia. And similar to what Marie was saying, it is a whole lot of work when you were planning to send out couriers who already knew the exhibition, who like conservators who are familiar with it, art handlers, registrars, and then trying to prep that to return without any of you, which we can talk a little bit more about later. But we have sent now 2 exhibitions to other domestic institutions where we would have normally sent a courier with the entire exhibition, where we did not. We did have the benefit of having already shown them at LACMA, so we were able to do a lot of that prep work already. So the sending them was a little bit easier. We did still have to do a whole lot more documentation than we normally would have done. Prepare, copious install notes, meet with the team in advance, the other institutions, just to go over the packing images and the condition and go step by step through the all of the install notes. But they were fairly successful. We were able to hire a contract conservator at each of the locations to act as our agent. And we had met with them and gone over everything with them. And we're just in constant communication with them the whole install. And it went really smoothly, actually. So we haven't yet had to do an exhibition where we haven't installed it at LACMA yet, and then we're installing it somewhere else. But we are right now gearing up to do one in Macau, which we were again going to send a team for, but we don't know that we will still be able to in March. And that will probably be our first one that we would have to do where we haven't installed it at LACMA first. We have to install it for the first time elsewhere without someone.
That makes me think, what has the decision process been at your institutions when you're planning for projects, given our current situation, especially as you look towards a project where you haven't first installed it at your institution first? Is it a process that's similar to what it was like pre-COVID, or what are the factors that have changed, and what are the decisions that you're being faced with this time around?
Well, for us, we're still not allowed to travel at all. Business travel is still restricted. We've been closed since March. We've never reopened. So it's not really a decision. The decision is no courier at this point. The decision we're actually trying to decide now when we're sending things out is the level of virtual courier that we want to assign to it. Do we need somebody for every step, a bookend, and then oversee everything meet before? Can we get away with just the agent at the airport, that kind of thing? So in that respect, it's different, obviously, now than how it was handled before. But the decision is still, it is with our phones committee still is how we make that decision, even to what the level of courier oversight, virtual courier oversight is.
That's still something that's been kept inside, like the collections department, the conservation department, that staff level is still the ones running the decision. Because it seems like some of the issues that institutions have been running up against is the administration stepping in to also weigh in on the costs related to courier sending. Of course, obviously the human safety is a big factor that's now being considered as well.
Well, I will say, and then I'll let somebody else talk, because I've been talking for a while, but for us, it was definitely which I think for many institutions, an administrative directive from our director to try to reduce the number of outgoing loans, couriers that we were sending. But in our institution, our department was immediately brought in to discuss the feasibility of that, how to make it happen, what the risk factors are. So from an administrative level, it's more of a, this is what we want to achieve, how can we make it happen? But the individual case by case is still in our department. And our loans committee is made up of registrar, conservation, curatorial, and somebody.
Someone else who plays a role.
Somebody else who plays a very important role that I'll remember at a later time, sorry. But it is still what you're saying at that staff level that the decision is being made, but it is in concert and in reaction to what our administration is requesting from us, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Has that been a similar experience at the other institutions as well?
I can speak a bit for MoMA. It's somewhat similar to what Errin is describing. We do have, our director is very committed to reducing the number of couriers. This is after our initial closure. Staff returned back in July, and we started resuming shipments in late July. So after that initial closure period, we did start receiving shipments for loans that had been out and also releasing loans. And we continued our normal regular monthly meeting where we meet with representatives of curatorial, registrar, and conservation to determine the specific needs of each particular loan and shipment and decide how we would proceed. And because we do have a current suspension for staff travel, we're just trying to apply some of the options for virtual courier and the bookend options that you mentioned earlier, Amanda.
Mm-hmm. And I bet probably before we get too ahead of ourselves, we should define what we mean when we say virtual courier as well as bookend courier. And I went to pull up the white paper. And this is some of the resources that we'll include in the podcast, as well as, I don't know if we can include them now in the YouTube posting, but we might be able to drop a link to them in the chat. But there was a white paper that Jackie Cabrera wrote. Is that right? Okay. And that she defines it as well. And I'll see if I can't pull it up. But essentially, I'll start with bookend couriers. Bookend couriers is where you have one person at the outgoing point and another person at the receiving point, and there you get your idea of your bookend courier. And anyone can correct me if I'm wrong. Feel free to jump in. And then virtual courier is attaching certain things like maybe GPS, but I feel like she might have been talking about that in a separate scenario, but other things like doing FaceTime for install, other things like that, like a virtual person rather than a physical person being there. Hopefully I'm correct when I'm saying that, but we'll give you the correct information in the chat. But that's what those two terms are talking about when we're talking about these new technologies, new ways we're doing things. That's what we mean.
And probably most institutions might have a slightly tweaked definition themselves.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
I mean, but when we refer to it today, we'll use that definition.
Right. And there's another paper, I'm calling them white papers, but it might not be the correct term, but the UK Registrars Group also wrote one as well. And I believe Jackie links to it in her white paper. So
the
those
Registrar
resources
Hour. Yeah.
Thank you. That's what it's called, the Registrar Hour.
Yeah.
I read this really late last night, so I feel like my brain is still processing some of the information that came my way. But it's interesting you all talk about that you're starting up again with receiving shipments, Stefanii, at MoMA. And I can say, at least for our institution, we had approved a loan pre-COVID and actually had to go back and decline it because it was a project that we weren't willing, and it was happening too soon for a vaccine to necessarily be widely available. So we had to renege on that, which was a hard decision to make because it would have been a really fantastic project to be a part of. And I imagine other institutions are facing similar decisions. But I'd like to hear a little bit about how shipping has been going for you, Stefanii, and what that experience has been like.
Sure. So we have a small sample so far. Really, we've completed about 20 shipments that had previously identified courier requirements. So we have just been meeting regularly, as I mentioned earlier, to identify precisely what we would like to employ, which solutions we'd like to employ. And we've had a range. And you mentioned earlier that the GPS trackers, and we've utilized those multi-sensor trackers, which have not only GPS, just, but temperature, humidity, and vibration sensing. We've done that for a number of shipments. We have had follow cars for at least one shipment. I think that was a USGI requirement. We have used bookend couriers as well. In some cases, we have been able to waive all of our requirements, but we have frequently used the live oversight via FaceTime or WhatsApp. So we've used lots of different formats for this so far, and we're really testing how that's working. The bulk of what we've done has been for outgoing loans. We had extended exhibitions that we have on site, and so we'll be doing the other side starting in January when those exhibitions will be closing. So we're testing out all of the different technologies and how those will work with our Wi-Fi, as well as what this means for workload implications and shifting responsibilities as well within what conservators will be asked to do, what registrars will be asked to do to provide this ability for our lenders.
Mm-hmm. In the process, oh, go ahead, John.
I was going to ask, you mentioned indemnity requirements. I mean, how much of a factor has that played in your decision making so far? And I bring that up also because Ms. Loiko is joining us on the chat. So if you have questions or comments, you can. Maybe I shouldn't volunteer her to answer them, but know that she is listening and can maybe help guide you or some aspect of that.
For MoMA, we've only had this issue with one particular exhibition so far. That was an indemnified show that we were lending to, and a return shipment at that. So that was the one for which we had a follow car. We are looking ahead to the dispersal of one of our exhibitions, the Fenion exhibition, which is currently indemnified. And so we've been working, not my department, but this is through our exhibition planning and administration department with Pat about how to proceed with those dispersal shipments.
I just want to chime in. I'm on a much smaller scale. The Brandywine's a small to mid-sized museum. We've received loans. We had a co-organized traveling exhibition that we delayed the deinstallation and dispersal of due to COVID. We would typically send a courier we had a partner that was a partner exhibition, and one of us would normally go to oversee the whole deinstallation. And we waived that. And I don't think any other institution did send a courier to that dispersal either. And then we had a lot of loans in the show. We would typically have a courier on the truck back, and we waived that as well. Mostly because of the travel restrictions, but also I think if it had happened now, we would have also decided against sending anyone, and we just trusted in our colleagues at that institution to handle everything for us.
Robin, I was wondering if we may have had any questions come in through the chat that we want to throw at the panelists.
Not so far. There was a kind of a good question, which I'm sure a lot of you have experienced, which was, has LACMA canceled any loans or exhibitions? But I'm guessing that quite a few people have had to deal with changing of their exhibition schedules over the past couple months. Let's just make it more general at that point.
Yeah, lots of postponements, extensions, postponed again, extended again. I think our exhibitions team has had quite a challenge, as I'm sure all yours has, trying to reschedule schedule, especially touring shows that we have lots of partners with. They're shifting schedules and just pushing them. So we have not on site had any canceled ones. We have several exhibitions that are touring now and are in the process of touring, and we've had a few venues drop out, and we've rescheduled or kind of rearranged the schedule, but we've also been able to add other venues to that as well. For loans, we've had fewer canceled than I was expecting. Almost everything got postponed and again, and again. We have had a couple of ones canceled, which, you know, I think as other institutions are assessing their budgets and really seeing what they can do now and what exhibitions they can carry, some have canceled. But that being said, we've started receiving new requests as well. So people are still planning for future exhibitions, and it is still processing. We've had quite a few loans return, and then we've also shipped out our first outgoing ones again. I think August, we had our first one start shipping out again. We've actually had much more activity in exhibitions at LACMA, shipping out and shipping in. We de-installed a dispersed and indemnified exhibition in September. However, the way that we usually do them at LACMA now is we actually indemnify on site and not as much in the shipping. So we weren't as affected by a lot of institutions that do indemnity from nail to nail, which has worked out. So we had in the show that I dispersed, there was one loan that was supposed to be indemnified in transit. We weren't able to meet those conditions that were needed. So the lender ended up insuring it for the transit back, which was fine. But everything else had ended at our outgoing check at LACMA. So it was definitely a mass of virtual courier organization for that, because every lender had been planning to send a courier and no one ended up doing it. So it was a lot more reg preparation, as Marie was alluding to earlier, in order to make that happen. And then for the shipping, similar to what Stefanii was saying, we utilized all the stuff, the tag trackers, the bookend couriers, the trusted agents, constant communication, the email chains with 20 people on them that you get 40 emails for the full shipping from beginning to end. But I will say for that exhibition in particular, I mean, we had passenger, freighter, truck, domestic, and international shipments, and they all went really smoothly. There were, of course, hiccups because shipping, there's always a hiccup, but through communication and quick reaction, everything was resolved very quickly. And I really feel like all of those shipments went as smoothly as they could have gone had a courier been on them. So that's my 2 cents for that exhibition.
Yeah, and thank you for making the comment about budget being an impact on exhibition planning in general, but just like how an institution has to rearrange themselves to try and get through this hump that we're all going through. And it's interesting the point you made about indemnity ending at the institution rather than being part of the travel. And it was good that that lender was able to ensure that piece for you all. And what I wanted to circle back to, though, was to ask if in some of the experiences that you've been going through the last few months with LACMA, of course, Marie, with the deinstallation that you did at Abu Dhabi, the Louvre Abu Dhabi, have there been methods during those shipments or those deinstallations that have been really successful that you think you might see using again in the future, regardless of travel bans or restrictions in any way, shape, or form?
Well, we have tried to. The objective was to maintain the level of trust with our partner institutions. So we felt like we should give them the more information that we could and the more guarantee that we could. So yes, we used, of course, live streams such as Visio conference, with the little different that in Abu Dhabi there are some FaceTime or WhatsApp video is not working. So we used more like Zoom or Teams, but it went okay. What was difficult was the time difference, because like us now, we are 9 hours different between Errin and I, and it is the same when we would like to work with Caitlin at the Met and us in Abu Dhabi. So that was quite challenging. So it made very early calls for people in the United States and quite late for people in Abu Dhabi, but it went okay. For the shipping, what we did was WhatsApp group involving everyone that were moderated by either the person from the Louvre Abu Dhabi who was accompanying the artworks, or the Hazenkamp airport supervisor who was taking picture of everything at every step, picture that we can't normally take because of obvious security reason. This time we decided to change that. So we took picture of the palette before and after palletization. We took picture of the pallets in the secured freezed room, waiting for the departure of the planes, and lenders could see in live, in direct, where were their palette, their crates, their artwork. So that was, I think, quite reassuring. What we did as well, and for that I would like to thank the Musée de l'Armée, because the exhibition was about chivalry and chivalry in the Middle Ages. So we had armors, knight and horse armors, which are artworks quite complicated to install when you are not a specialist in arms from Middle Ages. It's not a painting to hang in and out. So they proposed us a video tutorial made especially for us with one of their armor in France, commented at every step that we were able to send before the installation to the art handlers and the registrar side to watch again and again and ask the question. So they were very committed to help us provide the best level of information and of solution to compensate. I'm not sure. Yeah, well, to their physical absence. So and one of my objective as well was to provide the condition reports and the picture less than 24 hours after the operation, which was much more challenging than I thought, because processing the whole thousands of pictures that were taken by the team on site, which was great because we needed those very detailed pictures, but it was a huge, tedious and not funny work to download pictures from one secured FTP to another and to process them and rename them and send them. But it was difficult, but I think that amount of information was reassuring. I don't know whether all these methods are interesting to keep for the future, but it was quite interesting to find them and to discuss with all the parties, the lenders and the Louvre Abu Dhabi team on site, and to exchange about what will work or what won't work. And in the end, I think, like you, Errin, it went as smoothly as possible considering the situation. From the installation in the exhibition gallery to the transport, and we used as well, 5-6 shipments through to Paris, freighter flights via Amsterdam, without anyone here to oversee, no courier to oversee the unloading, and we delegate to Kortman Company in Amsterdam and then shipped by truck to France, and everything has been possible by maintaining the trust and with the discussion, because it was all about trust. Because when you do a live stream condition report, you can't see very well. The person behind the screen is obliged to trust the person who is actually seeing the artworks, because there is always lack of light or not the right angle to show the artwork. So trust is quite important in all this. And I think it has reinforced a lot the trust between the institutions involved in this exhibition. And that is a very good positive point about all these brand new ways of doing things.
Speaking of the trust, and this is a question for everyone here, how do you ensure trust? Is there a way that you assess the capabilities of people that you're partnering with, or do you require, or would you require in the future a third party contract conservator or registrar to make sure that they don't have a conflict of interest? If you're borrowing institution, they wouldn't necessarily want to report, some minor damage, for example. So how would you go about that process? And is that something that you think is sustainable? It seems now very cumbersome, but is it possible that we systematize this more so that it does become easier to create this trust going forward?
Well, for us, normally we always have this third party, for example, for condition report. This time we couldn't. So the trust mainly was based on the fact that people know each other. We have done the installation, and a representative of lenders came in Abu Dhabi and saw the way that everyone is working there. And so sometimes a few persons ask me about their qualification, but it was very one time, and I mean the other were so willing to see this work, and that they said okay, and we negotiate with the insurer as well to keep a normal insurance rate, because that was not certain. I mean, considering the way we are doing things without a contradictory condition report, the insurer might have said, we won't follow you on this one. But we explained, we give lots of detail, and the insurer follow us as well. And we are collecting the impression and the feedback from the lenders to improve ourselves, to see what has been working, what has not been working. And we're going to use that for the future to see what we can keep and what we cannot.
So John, can I add just to that? I think that this is it's something that we'll need to continue to build trust around this particular issue when we're giving over the control of our works, when we have typically sent a representative from our own staff. This is something that's certainly come up as a question and a topic that we feel we need to explore more fully. I think, third party registrar or conservator is always an option, but ideally we'd like to fully utilize the staff where it is possible for borrowing institutions, and build on that reciprocity. And we hope that they will allow us to do the same. There definitely will need to be transparency around the training and experience for specific staff members who will be acting on our behalf. But we're grateful that we do have extensive partnership with so many institutions. So a lot of that exists already, but for sure it will need to continue to build.
Right. I mean, this is where I think things like the Courier training that's being offered and developed by the UK registrars, the Dutch and the Scandinavian or Nordic registrars that ARCS is putting through is going to create sort of a baseline level of knowledge that I think, and others may come through with a similar type of training, but I think that will also ensure a certain level of competence and instill some confidence in lenders, sort of as you're saying. But I think the ultimate show of trust, as you say, Stefanii, is the fact that you trust the borrowing institution to do some of these things. So
I have an odd thing. Go ahead, John.
I was just saying there's a lot of a lot of chat.
Clearly, I've been away for a few months in this. I don't even know how to talk on Zoom with you anymore. Go ahead. Well, I was just going to add that I didn't have. So we had sent an object to New York to be conserved, and it's not the same as traveling exhibitions or what have you, but the conservator needed to get the object out of the city because it was going into lockdown and they weren't going to be able to work on the piece. And so we were presented with a weird situation where they wanted to bring it to their studio, but that was like up in Poughkeepsie. For those of you who don't know, that's not necessarily very close, but not necessarily too far away from New York City. But she wanted to take it in her personal vehicle. And so like all these red flags are flying in my brain, like in no situation would this ever be okay. So I have found that I'm communicating with my insurance provider way more during this closure than I have in the past. And although I would encourage you to communicate with them as much as possible because they're wonderful. But asking questions like that, like how ridiculous is this, something our insurance is okay with? We had her fill out a facilities report for her studio. I made her put like 2 different fire extinguishers in there. I mean, and she was but talking about relationships, like they were very willing to, fill out the facilities report for me, give me as much of the information as they could. And, was it a baseline of a scenario that we were okay letting our object go there, under the guise of a well-respected conservator? There's no question of their like ethical or professionalism, but this whole situation and context was just so different than what we've ever worked in before. And so that's just a different scenario where we went through some weird hoops. We asked, some questions we probably wouldn't have typically asked of them, but the relationship's strong. And, I'd never have a concern or question. I want to send them 5 other things. Please conserve these other pieces in our collection. It's really built on that relationship. And it's been the same, like with some of the installations we've had to change out while we've been closed. It's always like the first day of installation when you're working with a new institution, it's like the hardest day to get through because you're figuring out how to work with each other. But by the end of it, it's a wonder. You've really made a really strong relationship. I haven't had, in my experience, a bad one so far. And I think because of those scenarios, when it came time for us to deinstall an exhibition and it wasn't safe for the lending organization to send their staff, they actually had some confidence, they had confidence in us to take the show down. And we did FaceTime and we talked and we emailed, and many more photographs were sent and more documents were processed than we typically would. But it worked out, as you all have said, as smoothly as it could have been. But in the future, I would look forward to working with that institution again, because it was such a successful relationship under a very stressful time period. And that's been a really positive thing that's come out of a lot of this.
So with the idea of trust, that's sort of like one key component of this equation. If we can, manage the trust side, then we have to manage the cost side. And one thing that's a big component, big part of this question is, are you getting pressure from upper administration and in order to maintain this no courier standard? And I don't want anybody to feel weird about talking about their upper administration and what their demands are at this point. But I kind of want to turn this over to Sara to see if there's any way that the Courier task force could help in sort of creating, is there anything that you're doing in order to maybe create trust and dialogue between registrars and their upper administration who might be, under, heavy budget constraints that maybe we can, confidently create a guideline in order to move forward with similar protocols, maybe not as extreme as they are now, but, move forward with something more akin to, what a registrar would typically prefer.
Yeah, I think this is something that our group has talked a lot about. It's something that we were kind of tasked with before COVID, when we were kind of morphing from the Courier training into kind of what our future goals were. And we're really, I think, committed to looking at guidelines. I think it's important. It's actually why I personally wanted to be involved with the Courier group in ARCS, because as a small to mid-sized museum, I was seeing a lot of, we do a fair amount of sending couriers out, but we also host many couriers. And I was seeing kind of a wide range of practice and reasoning to send couriers. And I would love to see us as a professional organization and even globally, really look at what those standards are for sending someone. Standards for training, like John was saying. I think that Courier training that kicked off in March if that can get back into the rotation and we start that on a regular basis, I think that could be a great benchmark for people that are couriers out in the field. And we definitely, I think, are talking a lot about the decision-making process within institutions, and our group has been working on kind of a courier decision-making tool that we're going to share soon. Just kind of looking at the reasons to send couriers, possible issues, solutions, and just kind of making sure that internally we're all looking at, what the reasons are and all of the different options we have when sending a courier with a work of art.
Well, one thing that this methodology, and when I say this methodology, I'm talking about, maybe book-in couriers and, not buying, first class tickets for people to fly around the world. I know we all love our courier trips and all that stuff, but it's obviously very pricey. But what this type of protocol, and maybe it's not appropriate for everything, but it does allow smaller institutions to have access to things, to loans that they wouldn't have otherwise been able to afford. If I don't know if that's actually, maybe the case of your institution or in maybe other people's institutions, but, if we go back to the pre-pandemic ways, it makes for a very strong hierarchy of museums.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I mean, I think key to all of this, well, not key, but one, we can never go back to where we were in many, many ways. I think we all know that. But also, I think it's huge to remember that, especially when working with your administration, compromise is huge, right? Like, you can't just expect them to, you can't just stick your heels in and dig in and say, this is the way we've done it because this is how we've always done it and this is how we'll always continue to do it. We are no longer where we used to be. And I feel like these last few months have really given us an opportunity to explore various courier alternatives. And I think it's important that we continue to use a lot of those, both because of what you're saying, John. I mean, money is a significant factor in what exhibitions can be held where and who can borrow what. And even in the larger institutions, money is still a thing. We're all still nonprofits. We're all seeing our budgets tighten. And if this is a way that we are able to continue the exhibitions on the scale that we are now and be able to see things from Paris, from Shanghai, from New York, then I feel like it's our responsibility as well to look to see where we can compromise and where we can continue to work these factors in. I'm not saying do anything unsafe, but there's a lot of really good things that are coming out of this, and the virtual courier and the bookend courier are great solutions to many, many loans.
Well, think about your exhibitions budget, and say, Stefanii mentioned that, she's got a small sample size of 20 exhibitions. Well, for many institutions, that's like 5 years of exhibitions, right? So imagine if just 5 of those, you did book-in couriers and you're not, say paying for all these plane tickets. I mean, that's already, tens of thousands of dollars that you're saving in your exhibitions budget. So it may not be appropriate for everything, but certainly for, a percentage of exhibitions. So, and again, I'm a believer that, that we can, train people and bring more of this into the fold, just because, not only because we will have to, but because, we will essentially, all be getting very good training at this. We are all getting to the point now where we travel to international conferences and we do so many webinars online. We are all getting a certain level of training now, and of course, there's going to be install issues. We can't all install armor on our own, but especially contemporary art is going to be very difficult to do. Via video chat. But I think that for, I've heard ranges of objects that are like, say, 2D wall objects being anywhere from, 60 to 90% of objects that get shipped. I mean, despite value, there's, we can let go of a lot of that stuff. This is just my opinion. I work for myself. I don't work for an institution. I'm not pushing anything, but anyway, that's my thought. I think we've got a lot of chatter in the chat. Is there anything that we should address in there, Robin?
Well, yeah, it's been really fun to read because it's like active right now. One thing that someone pointed out too is just that there's a question too about the carbon footprint comparable to sending a human courier and doing the virtual courier route. I think that is an interesting point. You know what I mean? Because that's something that, AIC has a mission for sustainability, and they have a group that deals with that and kind of looking at all those items. So that might be a thing to kind of think about eventually as we talk about this difference between, virtual and live couriering. And a lot of the discussion was talking about, is this going to be permanent changes? Which again, I think someone said in here, I feel like our lives, I think it was Errin, I feel like our lives have gone through a huge permanent change over the past couple of months. So it's kind of just us dealing with it and kind of handle it. Someone else was asking too, if any of you have been dealing with any of the data pulled from trackers. Have any of you started looking at the information pulled from that and just kind of using it for other purposes or kind of examining it? Or have you all had time for it? Or do we still feel like we're in kind of this recovery mode from months of not being able to do anything?
We have started to. We've had quite a few shipments, exhibition, and outgoing loans that we put trackers in. I will say, I don't know if anybody else, when they've used them, sometimes it's too much information. Sometimes I don't want to know all that information about my loan that's happening. But what we're trying to do with outgoing loans, we're putting, at least right now, to kind of develop the data and use it for our own benefit. We had a double crated loan, so we're going to put a tracker inside the inner crate and the outer crate to see how well the climate is actually holding and how well our crates are working, and vibration, all of that, and kind of use that to help increase or improve our crate building. We're kind of in the process of that now, but that's one of the hopes we're trying to get from pulling that information as well.
Robin, just to chirp in about the other question about whether this is a permanent change. Certainly what we're hearing here at MoMA is that this will be permanent impact, whether that means the reduction or complete elimination of courier trips. And we're now navigating what will constitute an exception to the policy that has been put together. So that's sort of where we are with the question about permanence.
Then does that mean that you are just basically put in the position to actively find a way to meet your collections care standards using all available tools, essentially?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And the message that we've received, and our director, Glenn Lowry's been working closely with AAMD and with BIZO, as well as the director of the AIC, and I think a number of other institutions that are really closely aligned on making this a permanent this is something we need to get comfortable with because it's something that we'll be dealing with for the foreseeable future.
I will second Stefanii. We are along those lines as well. We are trying to severely restrict courier travel for outgoing loans. Again, there's always exceptions because nobody knows what the future holds, but that is where we are moving as well to make this a more permanent solution. For us, exhibitions is a little bit different. When we tour an entire exhibition and we insure an entire exhibition, I believe we will still continue to be sending couriers because, as Marie has very clearly laid out, it's a lot more work when you don't have that ability. But that's where we're moving towards as well.
So you mentioned AAMD, and Glenn Lowry, of course, is also a board member there. They issued a statement on their about the Courier trips and everything. And the statement is essentially AAMD does aim to significantly curtail courier travel permanently as a means of cost reduction across all museums. Is that part of these decisions? I assume it is the case of MoMA, but what's your response?
Well, he's made it clear that cost is not the driving factor here. That it is a consideration, but sustainability and our need to keep our staff within our building to be able to fulfill all of our other endeavors. All of that has been figured in. So the fact that cost reduction is sort of the one named item in the statement is a little regrettable, because I think it's maybe one of many considerations here.
Yeah. Marie, is there anything on the European side that is similar? Any, say, whether it's a French registrar group or a European group that is making a similar sort of declaration on behalf of museums to reduce courier travel?
Well, not that I'm aware of, which definitely doesn't mean that it is not the case. I know that we all are thinking right now what to do. And our institution, Agence France Museums, has a board composed with mainly the president of very important French national institution. So when those people meet and discuss such subject, we can sort of view it as a global reflection. For French institution, like I said, I think I'm not talking for European, but for French institution, we are going to go slow with all this innovation. This is we are the ancient world, but we are willing to move along with everyone. But I think it will take time for every institution to let go that kind of ways to do things. But definitely people are thinking right now not only about the cost. And from my organization, we were pre-COVID already very pushed to manage the cost and mutualize the courier, because we are spending money that is given to us, and we need to report and that this money is well used for a reasonable reason. So it is a question we always have in mind. Is it reasonable to send 2 or 3 couriers from the same institution because it is different departments? So this type of question are now mandatory because of the global situation. But we always has it in mind, and now we are going to have them with our partner, and that is what's interesting. We won't be the only one asking other to make an effort about that. We are going to think globally on this question, and maybe a bit a bit slowly, but we are definitely having those questions in mind.
I think we need to ask one more final question here, and that is looking for the future of the protocols that we have enacted for the time being, the temporary protocols. Which are the ones that you think are most likely to be things that we adopt on a permanent or semi-permanent basis? We'll start with, can we start with Stefanii?
Sure, thanks. I think it'll be a continuation of what we have experimented with starting this summer. So we've used widely the bookend couriers, likewise the video conversations in different formats, and the multi-sensor trackers. I think we'll be doing that rather extensively going forward.
How about Errin?
Yeah, just second what Stefanii said. I think we will continue to use pretty much everything we started now. I will say one of the things I do love about this versus the live courier is being able to split up tasks along the courier trip. So I can have a registrar oversee the shipment. I can have a conservator be present to highlight condition issues. I can have a prep be there to oversee the install. I love being able to split that up so it really suits the best skills. And like if I had a 3-day shipment, I can split that up between multiple people so no one person has to stay awake the whole time. So for me, that's one of the best things that in the Tide Tracker that have come out of this, which I don't know how long it would have taken us to get there without the pandemic. So I do look forward to seeing that continue, I would say.
Marie?
Yeah, I think video conference will definitely stays because there definitely are some artwork that allows us to use these ways, and we shall improve ourselves in some very practical questions such as which device is the more appropriate? Is it a computer, laptop? Is it an iPad? Is it your phone? Depending on what artwork you are trying to film, is it a very small piece or a very big one? I think now we can go further in those very practical reflection rather than just a principle that was in our mind before. And now we can get deeper into things. And yeah, I think video conference, and I think maybe what you called pointed Courier, and I wasn't familiar with this expression, but yes, I mean, trust a person on site in Abu Dhabi to accompany the work at the airport and send people at the arrival. That seems to me quite possible to keep and to continue.
Okay, and then Sarah, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, as a borrowing institution, I'd really love to see a lot more contract conservators and registrars involved whenever possible as a alternative to a courier, in terms of budget and then also just timing. I think for us, that might give us a little bit more leverage to be able to borrow from some of the major institutions that are not going to be sending couriers, but maybe we can negotiate to have a conservator, a third party conservator oversee, the loan from start to finish in terms of unpacking and installation and condition reporting. So I'd like to be able to work with our lenders to be able to do that a little bit more. I think that would be great.
Wonderful. Well, I think we're about at the time to start wrapping things up. But before we go, we did want to have Sarah give a quick update to everybody about some of the work that the subtask force has been doing and some of the resources that may become available shortly.
Yeah, I think I mentioned the courier decision-making tool. So we're working on that. We are also pulling together, there's so many great resources out there right now about courier travel and decision-making and practice during COVID. And so we want to pull all of those together in one place, and we're working on getting all of that together for you all on the ARC's website. So look for that soon.
Excellent. And as I said before, we will make sure that resources are posted to the podcast when it goes out, and some of the other things we might have touched on today we'll make sure are available to you guys. And I think, Robin, you have a few ARCS things you want to throw out to everyone?
Yeah, just real quick. Well, I'm going to say the conversation in the chat is still humming along. So I think if you guys want to keep this going, we do have if you're a member of ARCS, you can use our forum. You can post some questions on there and we can get replies to you. We also try to archive these discussions every time. So we'll grab those as well. And if there's direct questions to any of our panelists, we'll be sure to get those to them. For ARCS though, just a couple of things. Most likely at the end of this week, there's going to be some information regarding our upcoming conference, including conference proposals for late 2021 coming out. So please keep an eye on your inbox for that. There'll be information on what we're looking for, what our conference might be looking like, and all sorts of fun information. So keep an eye out for that. And the other thing is that for ARCS members, we are planning on hopefully doing some sort of a holiday party in the middle of the month. So again, keep an eye on that. You'll receive an invitation in your inbox. We have some surprises planned, so keep an eye on that for that as well. And our next ARCS chat should be happening early January. So we're still doing the programming. We're still going to be here. We know 2021 is going to be hopefully better than 2020, and we will be going from there. So that's all I have. So let me know if anyone else wants to say anything else. And I want to say again, a great thanks to all of our panelists for showing up today.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate your contributions. There's just so much to talk about here. I just wish we could have a full day to go through it all. But the chat will keep us all involved for a while.
Excellent. Thank you all again. We really appreciate it.